The unexpected encounter. Jack had always liked walking home from work. The quiet streets and the soft hum of city life calmed his mind. After a long day of endless meetings, he needed that peace. It was the same path he took every day, past darkened storefronts, under glowing streetlights, and through quiet alleys. But tonight was different. As Jack walked down the familiar street, the cool rain began to fall, light at first, then heavier. The sound of the rain on the pavement drowned out the usual noise of the city. Jack pulled his jacket closer around him, trying to stay dry as he quickened his pace. He was eager to get home and relaxed. Then something caught his attention. It was the sound of footsteps, soft, almost too light to be heard over the rain. At first, Jack thought it was just his imagination, but then the steps grew closer. He turned around, heart racing a little, expecting to see a fellow pedestrian, maybe someone else trying to escape the rain. Instead, he saw a girl. She was standing at the edge of the alley, her face pale under the dim light. She was no older than 10, with bright, large eyes that seemed almost too big for her small face. Her hair was platinum blonde, wet from the rain, but still shining like a halo around her head. What struck Jack most were her ears. They were long, pointed, like something out of a fantasy story. He blinked a few times, wondering if he was seeing things. "Hey, are you okay?" Jack asked, his voice soft. The girl looked lost, and he didn't want to ignore her. The city could be a cold place for someone so young, especially in the rain. The girl didn't answer right away. She just stared at him, with those huge eyes, like she was trying to decide something. Jack took a cautious step forward. "Where are your parents?" he asked gently, his concern growing. But she just shook her head slowly, her expression unreadable. Then she spoke. "Will you be my dad and my mom's forever?" Jack's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't expected those words. They were so strange, so out of place, and yet they seemed so serious, so full of meaning. He stood frozen for a moment, unsure of what to say. His mind raced. What did she mean? Why would a little girl say something like that? And more importantly, why did it feel so important? The girl took a small step toward him, her bare feet making no sound on the wet pavement. She seemed to be shivering, though it wasn't from the cold. There was a deep sadness in her eyes, something that made Jack feel a sense of urgency. He had to help her, but the strange words she had spoken echoed in his mind, confusing him. Jack kneeled down in front of her. "I don't know what you mean," he said, his voice low and calm. "But are you lost? Do you need help?" She didn't answer him. Instead, she just whispered again, the words barely audible over the sound of the rain. "Please, will you be my dad and my mom's forever?" Jack's chest tightened, and for a moment, he didn't know what to do. The girl's words felt like a question from a different world, one he wasn't a part of. She wasn't just a lost child, there was something else about her, something that made him feel like he was on the edge of something bigger than he could understand. He looked around, but the street was empty. The rain continued to fall in sheets, and the city seemed farther away than ever. The girl's gaze didn't leave him. It was as if she was waiting for him to make a decision he wasn't prepared to make. He had no idea who she was or where she came from, but something about her made him feel like he couldn't walk away. I don't know what to say," Jack stammered. "I can't be your dad." But as soon as he spoke the words, he saw a flash of disappointment in the girl's eyes. It was brief, but it was there. Then she said the words that made his heart stop. "You're the only one who can protect us." Jack blinked, trying to make sense of what she had just said, Protect us, he asked. Who else is with you? The girl took a deep breath, her small shoulders shaking slightly. My mother, she whispered. She's waiting for you. Jack stood up slowly, his mind racing. What was happening? Why did this little girl seem so familiar, as if he'd known her his entire life? And why did her words feel like a call to something important? He glanced down at her, his heart heavy with the weight of her plea. He had no answers, but one thing was clear. This wasn't just an ordinary child. There was something much more to this encounter, something that was about to change his life forever. As Jack held out his hand to the girl, he realized that his life had just taken a turn he could never have expected. And whatever was coming next, he had to be ready for it. The mysterious connection. Jack sat down on the cold, wet pavement, his hand still hovering in the air. The girl took his hand without hesitation, her small fingers cold to the touch. She looked up at him with those large, strange eyes, her expression unreadable, but there was a certain trust in the way she held his hand. It felt as if she had known him her whole life, and for a fleeting moment, Jack wondered if he somehow knew her too. Come on, let's get you out of this rain, Jack said, his voice softer now, more determined. He gently pulled her toward the warmth of his apartment, trying to ignore the confusion swirling in his mind. He had no idea what was happening, but something told him he couldn't walk away from this. They walked in silence, the girl close by, his side, as if she feared something would happen if they were separated. Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, but he didn't know what it was. Her words echoed in his mind. Will you be my dad and my mum's forever? He couldn't stop thinking about them, even though he knew he shouldn't. It was just too strange. When they finally reached his apartment building, Jack felt a strange sense of relief. He led the girl up the stairs and into his unit, the warm light of the apartment a stark contrast to the dark, cold world outside. He closed the door behind them, then turned to face her. Okay, Jack said, running a hand through his wet hair. We're safe now. Do you want something to eat? I'm sure you're hungry. The girl didn't answer, just stood there in the middle of the room, staring at him. Her face was still pale, her eyes too bright in the dim light, but there was something else, something deeper that he couldn't explain. It was as if she was waiting for him to do something, to make some kind of decision, and Jack felt an odd pressure building in his chest. He sighed and moved toward the kitchen, opening the fridge and pulling out a bottle of water. He handed it to her, but she didn't take it. Instead, she looked past him, her gaze fixed on something else. I know you're scared, Jack said, trying to break the silence, but you're safe here. Can you tell me what's going on? She finally looked at him, her expression unreadable. I don't know how to explain, she said quietly, her voice shaking. But my mother, she's in danger. We need your help. Jack's heart tightened. He had been expecting something like this, but hearing it out loud made it real. He put the water down and walked toward her. Where is your mother? What kind of danger are you talking about? He asked, trying to remain calm. Who's after you? The girl's eyes flickered to the door, then back to Jack. I can't say. It's not safe here, but we need you. My mum told me that you would protect us. Jack frowned, confused and uncertain. What do you mean? Why me? The girl hesitated before speaking again, her voice barely above a whisper. Because you're special. You have something inside you that they can't touch. You're the only one who can protect us. Jack stared at her, trying to make sense of what she had said. Something inside him stirred, an uncomfortable feeling in his chest, but he couldn't pinpoint why. He wasn't special. He was just an ordinary guy trying to get by in the world. "Look," Jack said, "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not some kind of hero. I'm just a guy who works 9 to 5. But the girl's gaze was unwavering. "You are more than that," she insisted. "You just don't know it yet, but you will." Her words felt like a puzzle he couldn't solve. Jack wanted to believe her, to understand what she meant, but he couldn't. It felt like his whole world was being turned upside down. He had no idea what was going on, but he knew one thing. He couldn't let this girl down. "All right," Jack said, his voice firm. "We'll figure this out, but you have to tell me everything. What's going on? What danger are you in?" The girl took a deep breath, her eyes closing for a brief moment, as if she were gathering strength. "My mother, she's being hunted. We were on the run. We didn't know where to go, but we found you. You're the only one who can help us." Jack stood there, trying to digest her words. He wasn't sure what to think, but he knew that something bigger than both of them was at play. He had to protect her, and if her mother was in danger, he had to help her too. "I'll protect you," Jack said, his voice steady now, "but you have to trust me. I'll do whatever I can to help." The girl nodded, her face softening just a little. "Thank you." As Jack watched her, he couldn't help but wonder what kind of future lay ahead for them. And what was it about her that made him feel like his entire life was about to change? Unraveling the truth the next morning, Jack awoke with a heavy feeling in his chest, the weight of the previous night's events still pressing on his mind. The girl whose name he had learned was Lyra was sitting quietly in the corner of the living room, her small form barely noticeable against the backdrop of the dim apartment. Her large eyes were fixed on the window, watching the rain pour down in endless sheets. She had not spoken much after Jack had promised to protect her. Her silence was unsettling, and it only added to the strange, eerie atmosphere that seemed to linger around her. Jack sighed, rubbing his face as he stood up and made his way into the kitchen. He needed to think, to make sense of everything, but how could he? An alien child had shown up on his doorstep, claiming that he was the only one who could protect her and her mother from an unseen danger. He had no idea what he had gotten himself into. "Lyra," Jack called, his voice soft but firm. "Come here, I need to know more." Lyra didn't move at first, but after a few seconds, she slowly stood and walked over to him, her steps light and graceful despite the obvious fatigue in her face. Jack motioned for her to sit down at the small kitchen table, and she did, folding her small hands neatly in her lap. "I know you've been through a lot," Jack began, his voice low and reassuring, "but I need to understand what's really going on. You said your mother is in danger. Who's after you? Why me?" Lyra looked at him, her expression distant, like she was trying to find the right words. Finally, she spoke, her voice quiet, but filled with a strange intensity. "It's the Zynthar," she said, her words almost like a whisper, as if saying their name aloud would give them power. "They're an alien race, much older and more dangerous than any of the species you've encountered. They want to destroy my people, and they've been hunting us for centuries." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. He had never heard of the Zynthar, but something about Lyra's tone made it clear that they were not to be taken lightly. He sat down across from her, trying to steady his breathing. "Why would they want to destroy your people?" he asked, though part of him already feared the answer. Lyra's eyes flickered with a mixture of sadness and anger. "Because we are different. My people have abilities, powers, that the Zynthar fear, We can manipulate energy, control elements, even heal with our minds. But we've kept our powers hidden, living in peace with other species. The Zynthar think we are a threat, so they've made it their mission to hunt us down, to erase us from existence. Jack leaned back, trying to process the gravity of what she was saying. He had seen strange things in his life, but nothing like this. A war between alien species, and he was now caught in the middle of it. It was hard to believe. But there was no denying the look in Lyra's eyes. She wasn't lying, she was scared. "So, your mother?" Jack began, trailing off, but Lyra seemed to understand what he was asking. "She's the leader of our people," Lyra said. "She's powerful, but she can't fight alone. The Zynthar are too strong, too many. They've been chasing us for weeks, and we've had to keep moving, hiding. I was sent to find you because my mother believes you are the key to protecting us." Jack stared at her, still struggling to understand how he fit into all of this. He wasn't a warrior, he wasn't a protector. He was just a regular guy, a man with a desk job and a quiet life. But something about Lyra's words resonated deep within him, like a spark that was slowly starting to ignite a fire. "Why me?" Jack asked again, his voice shaking slightly. "What makes you think I'm the one who can help?" Lyra's gaze softened as she met his eyes, and she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're not just anyone, Jack. You are a descendant of the first humans who encountered our kind, the ones who helped us hide from the Zynthar. Your bloodline. It carries a trace of the ancient connection between our species. You're the only one who can stand against them." Jack's heart raced. He didn't know what to think. A descendant of the first humans to encounter these aliens, a bloodline that could help defeat them. It sounded like something out of a science fiction novel, not real life. But again, Lyra's gaze held so much truth that Jack couldn't bring himself to doubt her. There was something about the way she looked at him, like she knew something he didn't, and somehow it made him feel like his life had always been leading to this moment. "So what now?" Jack asked, still trying to wrap his mind around the situation. Lyra stood up slowly, her small frame looking fragile. But there was a determination in her eyes that Jack couldn't ignore. "We need to find my mother," she said, her voice firm. "She's in hiding, but she won't stay hidden for long. The Zynthar are getting closer, and if we don't act fast, we'll lose everything." Jack nodded, a sense of resolve filling him. He didn't know what was coming, but he knew one thing. He wasn't going to let this little girl down. He didn't know how he was going to help, but he would. "All right," Jack said, his voice steady. "Let's find your mother. We'll figure this out together." Lyra's face brightened, and for the first time since Jack had met her, she smiled. It was a small smile, but it was enough to give him hope. Maybe he wasn't just an ordinary guy after all. Maybe, just maybe, he had a bigger role to play in all of this. As they prepared to leave, Jack couldn't help but feel that his life was about to change forever. The arrival of the Mother Jack's apartment felt like a temporary haven, a fleeting moment of calm in the storm that was quickly approaching. As the morning faded into afternoon, the gravity of their situation began to settle into Jack's bones. Lyra, though quiet, seemed more determined with every passing minute, her focus unwavering as she moved about the apartment. Packing what little she had, Jack stood by the window, looking out into the grey sky. The world outside felt unchanged, but everything inside him had shifted. He wasn't just a guy trying to get through the day anymore. He was now a part of something much bigger, something alien, and he wasn't sure he was ready for it. "Lyra, approached him with a small satchel, her eyes meeting his with a quiet confidence. "We need to go. My mother is waiting." Jack turned to her, his heart pounding in his chest. "What are we waiting for then?" Lyra nodded, her expression softening for a moment before it hardened again. She knew what lay ahead. "The Zynthar aren't far behind. We need to move quickly. I'll lead the way." They left the apartment together, stepping into the rain-soaked streets, their footsteps echoing in the empty alleyways. Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that at any moment danger could strike. But Lyra walked with purpose, her small figure cutting through the gloom like a beacon, leading him into the unknown. They walked for hours, with Lyra occasionally glancing around, her eyes scanning the crowds, the corners, always alert. Jack followed, trying to keep up, his mind still reeling. He had no idea what kind of enemies they were about to face, but he knew they weren't ordinary foes. The Zynthar, whatever they were coming for them. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the city, Lyra stopped suddenly in front of a nondescript building, an old, weathered warehouse tucked away at the edge of the city. She turned to Jack, her face serious. "We're here. My mother is inside." Jack's heart skipped a beat. This was at the moment when everything would change. He didn't know what to expect, but he knew that the stakes had never been higher. He followed Lyra inside, his senses heightened, ready for whatever came next. The warehouse was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of dust and age. Lyra led him deeper into the building, her small form moving with ease through the maze of crates and abandoned equipment. Jack followed, his steps hesitant, his eyes constantly scanning for signs of danger. At the far end of the warehouse, they stopped in front of a heavy metal door. Lyra knocked 3 times, a rhythmic pattern that Jack didn't understand. After a moment of silence, the door creaked open, revealing a tall figure standing in the shadows. Jack's breath caught in his throat as the figure stepped forward. She was unlike anyone Jack had ever seen. She was beautiful, but not in the way humans were beautiful. Her skin was a soft shade of silver, her eyes a deep, glowing blue that seemed to see right through him. Her long, flowing hair shimmered like strands of starlight, and her presence was so commanding that Jack felt a sudden rush of both awe and fear. The woman's gaze locked onto Lyra, and her face softened, the tension in her features melting away. As she knelt down to embrace the girl, "Lyra," the woman said, her voice rich with emotion, "I've missed you." "I've missed you too, Mum," Lyra replied, her voice trembling as she returned the hug. For a moment, Jack could see the deep bond between them, the kind of bond that only a mother and child could share. As they pulled apart, the woman turned, her attention to Jack, her piercing blue eyes narrowing slightly as she studied him. Jack felt a shiver run down his spine, but he forced himself to stand tall. "You're the one," she said, her voice calm yet filled with authority. "The one who can help us." Jack swallowed hard, trying to keep his voice steady. "I don't know what's going on, but I'm here to help. I don't know how, but I'll do whatever I can." The woman nodded, her expression softening just a little. "I am Alira," she said, "and this is my daughter, Lyra. We are of the Assyrians, a peaceful people with the power to manipulate energy, but that peace has been shattered. The Zynthar are coming for us." Jack's mind was spinning, but he held his ground. "What do you need from me?" Alira studied him for a long moment before speaking again. "The Zynthar are a ruthless race. They see power like ours as a threat, and they will stop at nothing to destroy us. They have found us before, and we've been running ever since. But we cannot run forever. I have seen you, Jack. I have seen your potential. You are the one who can help us stop them." Jack's chest tightened at her words. He didn't feel special. He didn't feel like he had any potential. But the way she spoke, the way she looked at Hammett, felt like something inside him was awakening. "I don't know how I can help," Jack said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm just a guy. I don't have powers. I don't know what to do." Elira's eyes softened, and she placed a hand on his shoulder. "You may not know yet, but you have a power within you. A connection to the Assyrians. It runs deep in your bloodline. That's why you're the one we need. The Zynthar fear that power, and they will do anything to destroy it, but we will fight back." For the first time, Jack felt a flicker of hope. He didn't know what kind of power he had, but Elira was right about one thing. He wasn't ordinary. And now, it seemed, he was about to become part of a fight he never saw coming. "We'll protect each other," Jack said, his voice steady. "I'll do whatever it takes." Elira smiled, her eyes full of gratitude. "Thank you, Jack. You have no idea how much this means to us." Lyra's face brightened, and she ran up to him, her arms wrapping around his waist. "Thank you, Dad." Jack felt a surge of emotion he couldn't explain. He wasn't sure if he was ready to be her father, but in that moment, with the weight of everything that was happening around them, he knew one thing for sure. He was going to do everything in his power to protect the strange new family. Together, they would fight the Zynthar, and together they would survive. Growing bonds. The days following Jack's meeting with Elira were filled with confusion, tension, and a growing sense of responsibility he wasn't prepared for. The once ordinary life he had known seemed like a distant memory, swallowed by a whirlwind of alien threats and unexpected family dynamics. Every time he looked at Lyra or at Elira, he felt the weight of their trust pressing down on him. Like a promise he had yet to fully understand, Jack had been raised to keep his head down, to go through life quietly, without drawing attention. But now, here he was, tangled in a fight for survival against a race of aliens determined to destroy an entire species. Worse, Lyra had come to him with that strange, unsettling whisper, and now he was a part of their fight, whether he liked it or not. But as the days passed, something began to change. Despite the danger looming on the horizon, Jack couldn't deny the bond that was slowly growing between him and his new family. Lyra, though still quiet and reserved, had started to trust him more, always staying close by his side, always looking to him with those large, hopeful eyes. She'd never directly called him Dad again after the first time, but there was a warmth in the way she leaned on him, a silent acknowledgement that, in some way, he had become the protector she'd asked for. Elira, too, was different from the woman Jack had met that first night. When they'd first crossed paths, she'd seemed like a mysterious, powerful figure, someone who had everything under control. But as they spent more time together, Jack saw the softer side of her. There were moments when her shoulders would slump in exhaustion, or when her gaze would turn distant, as if the weight of their situation was getting to her. Jack didn't fully understand what she'd been through, but he knew that her strength didn't come from just her powers. It came from the love she had for Lyra, and the desperate need to protect her daughter at all costs. One evening, as they sat around the small dining table in Jack's apartment, Lyra was silently picking at her food, her eyes flickering between Jack and Elira. The tension between them had lessened over time, but there was still a heaviness in the air, a silent fear of what was coming. Jack had been trying to prepare himself for whatever might happen, but nothing could truly prepare him for the truth Alira was about to share. "We don't have much time," Alira said, breaking the silence. Her voice was steady, but Jack could hear the underlying urgency. "The Zynthar will track us down. It's only a matter of time before they find us here." Jack felt a cold shiver run through him at her words. He had known the Zynthar were coming, but hearing it from her, seeing the concern on her face, made it all too real. He had been trying to hold on to hope, but the truth was starting to sink in. This wasn't just a battle for survival. It was a fight for everything they cared about. "We've been running for so long," Alira continued, her gaze drifting to the floor. "My people, the Assyrians, have been hunted for centuries. We're the last of our kind, and the Zynthar have made it their mission to wipe us out. I thought we could stay hidden for a while longer, but I was wrong." Lyra looked up at her mother, her small hand reaching for hers. "Are we going to be okay, Mum?" she asked quietly, her voice laced with fear. Alira squeezed her hand gently, her expression softening as she turned to face her daughter. "We'll be okay, Lyra, as long as we're together, we'll find a way to survive." Jack watched them, feeling a pang of sadness in his chest. He wasn't sure how he fit into all of this, but one thing was clear: these two had become his family. He couldn't abandon them, not now, not when they needed him the most. "I'll protect you," Jack said suddenly, his voice strong, that it shook with the weight of his own uncertainty. "I don't know how, but I will." Alira's eyes met his, a flicker of something soft and thankful crossing her face. "You already have, Jack," she said quietly. "You've done more than you know, and Lyra believes in you, too." Lyra nodded solemnly, her gaze meeting Jack's with a quiet trust that left him speechless. She had come to him, asking for protection, and in return, she had given him something he hadn't realized he needed: a purpose. The days that followed were filled with preparation. Alira taught Jack and Lyra how to defend themselves, how to harness whatever abilities they had inherited from their Assyrian bloodline. Alira was a master of energy manipulation, able to bend light and heat to her will, while Lyra's power seemed more subtle, her touch healing wounds and calming pain. As much as Jack wanted to learn, he felt out of place, but Alira had a way of making him feel like he belonged, like he was a part of something bigger. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, Lyra leaned against Jack's side, her small head resting on his shoulder. She had grown more comfortable around him, and Jack found himself growing more comfortable around her as well. He wasn't sure what he was becoming: a father, a protector, or something else entirely, but he knew one thing: he couldn't imagine life without them anymore. Alira sat across from them, her eyes distant as she thought about what lay ahead. "The Zynthar won't stop," she said, her voice low. "They'll come for us, and they won't show mercy. We have to be ready for them." Jack nodded, his resolve hardening. He didn't know how to fight an alien race, but he was going to learn. And if he had to, he would die protecting Lyra and Alira. He had made a promise to them, one he would keep. As the evening grew late, Jack stood and walked over to the window, looking out at the city lights that seemed so distant now. His world had changed, and there was no going back. But in that moment, with Lyra's hand in his and Alira's steady presence beside him, Jack knew that he wasn't alone, and together they would fight for their survival. The storm was coming, but they would face it together. The enemy strikes the night seemed quieter than usual, the distant hum of the city muffled by the tension that hung in the air. Jack lay awake in his bed, the weight of everything that had happened pressing down on him. His mind raced, unable to find peace. Lyra's soft breathing from the couch and Alira's quiet presence in the corner did little to calm him. It was strange to think how, just a few days ago, his biggest worry was making it through a routine workday. Now, he was part of an intergalactic battle between alien species, standing at the center of a fight he hadn't asked for but couldn't walk away from. The hours dragged by, and sleep eluded him. It wasn't just the looming threat of the Zynthar that kept him awake, was the knowledge that soon their quiet life together would be shattered. Alira had prepared him for the worst, but he couldn't help but wonder how long they could keep running, hiding. The Zynthar were relentless, and every minute felt like a ticking clock. Suddenly, the quiet stillness was broken by a loud, piercing sound. It echoed through the walls of the apartment, sending a wave of panic crashing over Jack. His heart raced, and adrenaline surged through him, his body immediately on high alert. Alira sprang to her feet, her eyes wide with alarm. "They're here." Jack didn't need to ask who. He could feel the fear rising within him, a feeling that twisted his gut. The Zynthar had found them. Lyra's eyes widened in terror as she scrambled off the couch, rushing toward Alira. "Mum, what do we do?" Alira moved quickly, her calm demeanor cutting through the panic in the room. "We fight, but we need to be smart. Stay close." Jack didn't know what he was supposed to do, but he wasn't going to sit around waiting for them to come to him. He grabbed the makeshift weapons they had prepared, whatever they could find in the apartment. But as he strapped a utility belt across his waist, he couldn't shake the feeling that it wouldn't be enough. He had no experience in combat, no training in the kind of battle they were about to face. "Stay behind us, Jack," Alira said, her voice firm. "You're not ready for this yet. We need to protect you." But Jack shook his head, his jaw set with determination. "I'm not staying behind. I'm in this with you." Lyra looked at him with wide eyes, uncertainty and trust battling in her gaze. Jack could see the fear in her expression, but also a quiet hope, a belief that he could be more than just a bystander. "Please," Lyra whispered, "we need you." The pleading tone in her voice was all the encouragement Jack needed. He couldn't back down now, not when they were counting on him. He didn't know how to fight, but he wasn't going to let them face this danger alone. He had to protect them. It was his responsibility now. The door suddenly crashed open with a loud bang, and the Zynthar were there. The first thing Jack noticed was the smell, a sickly, metallic scent that burned his nose and made his stomach turn. Through the doorway, a tall, imposing figure stepped into the apartment. Its skin was a deep, mottled grey, its body armored with strange, sleek, black plating that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. Its eyes glowed an eerie yellow, piercing through the darkness, as if it could see every movement, every thought. Its long, clawed fingers flexed in anticipation. Behind the leader, more Zynthar soldiers poured into the room, their presence overwhelming. They were tall, strong, and unnervingly quiet. Jack had seen videos of monsters in movies, but nothing could prepare him for the real thing. Alira stepped forward, standing protectively in front of Lyra, her energy crackling in the air as she prepared to defend her daughter. Jack could feel the shift in the atmosphere, the electric tension that rose between them and the Zynthar. The enemies were cold, calculating, and relentless. But Ilirushe was something else entirely. "You're too late," Alira said, her voice steady, her energy already swirling around her like a shield. "You'll never take us." The leader of the Zynthar stepped forward, its eyes narrowing at Illyra. "We've been hunting your kind for centuries. It ends tonight." Before Jack could react, Illyra's hand shot out, sending a wave of energy toward the Zynthar, knocking the closest one off its feet. The creature hissed, a guttural, chilling sound. But it quickly recovered and lunged back toward her. Jack didn't know what to do. He saw Illyra's power, but it was clear that the Zynthar weren't afraid of it. They were prepared for this. Jack's heart raced as he grabbed one of the weapons Illyra had left for him. It wasn't much, just a blaster, but he didn't know what else to do. "Stay back," Jack shouted, aiming the blaster at the advancing Zynthar. His hands shook as he tried to focus on the enemy, his pulse pounding in his ears. The leader of the Zynthar chuckled, its voice harsh and mocking. "You think that will stop us?" Before Jack could respond, the leader moved with lightning speed, its hand shooting out to grab Illyra by the throat. The grip was tight, unyielding, and Illyra gasped as the Zynthar lifted her off the ground with ease. "Mum," Lyra cried, her voice breaking. Jack's blood ran cold. This was real. They were here to kill them. Illyra struggled against the creature's hold, her energy flaring as she fought to break free. "Let go of me," she shouted. Her voice full of fury, the Zynthar leader sneered. "You've always been weak, and now you will die, just like the rest of your people." Jack could feel the terror rising in his chest, but something else began to stir within him. It was as if something deep inside him was calling out, urging him to act. He couldn't lose them, not now, not when they had come to him for help. The room seemed to go still for a moment, and then Jack's instincts kicked in. He fired the blaster, aiming at the Zinthar's hand that held Illyra. The shot hit its mark, and the creature recoiled in pain, releasing Illyra with a roar of anger. Illyra dropped to the ground, gasping for air. Jack ran to her side, grabbing her arm to help her up. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice urgent. Illyra nodded, though her face was pale. "We're not done yet," she said, looking up at the advancing Zynthar. "We have to fight back." Jack took a deep breath. There was no turning back now. The battle had begun, and this time he would be ready. A new family, the Zynthar leader, staggered back from the shot, its glowing yellow eyes filled with rage. It bared its teeth, a twisted snarl on its face. The air crackled with energy as the Zynthar soldiers regrouped, their hulking forms blocking any escape. The room felt smaller now, the walls pressing in as the tension grew, thick with the anticipation of battle. Jack's heart pounded in his chest, but he kept his eyes fixed on Illyra, who was rising to her feet with a grim expression. Her powers were already swirling around her, her energy crackling in the air like a storm waiting to burst. She had been the one to lead them this far, the one who had kept them alive, but now Jack knew that he had a role to play in this fight too. He wasn't just a protector. He wasn't just a bystander. He was part of this now, part of their family, bound by a promise he had made to them, and he would not let them down. Lyra stood beside them, her face pale but determined. Her small hands were clenched into fists. At her sides, her eyes wide with fear but filled with strength. She was more than just a child. She was the key to everything. Jack could feel it, the weight of her potential, and the love she had for her mother. She wasn't alone anymore. They were all in this together. The Zynthar leader growled, its voice a low rumble as it stepped forward, fury radiating off of it. "You think you can stop us? You have no idea what you're up against." Jack's grip tightened on the blaster, but he knew it wouldn't be enough. He needed something more, something inside him that he hadn't yet discovered. He wasn't sure what it was, but as he stood there with Alira and Lyra, he felt it, like a spark ready to ignite. His bloodline, whatever Alira had seen in him, was calling out, urging him to fight. This wasn't just about protecting them anymore. This was about fighting for something bigger than himself. I don't know what you're talking about, Jack said, his voice steady, though his insides were a storm of nerves. But I'm not just going to stand here and watch you take them. Alira's gaze flickered to him, a faint spark of pride in her eyes. You're stronger than you think, Jack, she said softly. You just have to believe it. Lyra looked up at him, her small hand reaching for his. You're our family now, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the noise. Please, fight with us. The words hit Jack like a wave. Family. He had never imagined something like this. He had never expected to find a place where he truly belonged. But as he stood with them now, there was no denying it. He was no longer just Jack. He was their protector. Their father, the Zynthar leader, snarled, raising its weapon, preparing to strike. But before it could, a pulse of energy exploded from Alira, knocking the soldiers back. Jack felt the air around him shift, and then something inside him snapped it. Started as a small flicker, a surge of warmth in his chest, but it spread quickly, filling his body with an incredible power. His hand tightened around the blaster, and then, as if guided by something beyond his understanding, he aimed and fired. But this time, the blast was different. It wasn't just a shot. It was a force. The energy surged from him like a wave, the air around him crackling with raw power. The Zynthar leader staggered back, its weapon falling from its hand as the blast struck it directly. The creature hissed in pain, but Jack didn't stop. He fired. Again, the energy from his body amplifying with each shot. The Zynthar soldiers, who had been charging toward them, faltered, their movements slowed by the overwhelming force emanating from Jack. Alira stood beside him, her eyes wide with surprise, but also pride. Jack, she whispered, her voice filled with awe. You have it, the power within you. Jack could hardly believe it. The strength, the energy, it was as if something deep inside him had awakened. He could feel it, thrumming through his veins, filling him with a sense of purpose and power he had never known. This was what he had been meant for. This was why he was here. The Zynthar leader roared, its form shifting and flickering as it tried to recover, but it was clear that it had underestimated them. The energy around Jack surged again, and this time, with a single, focused blast, he struck the leader down. The creature fell, its body crumpling to the ground with a sickening thud. The room was silent for a moment, the dust settling, the air thick with tension. Jack stood there, breathing heavily, the blaster still in his hand. The Zynthar were defeated for now, but they had won something far more important. They had proven that they could stand together. Lyra rushed forward, her arms wrapping around Jack's waist. We did it, she whispered, her voice full of awe and gratitude. We're safe, Alira stepped forward, her eyes searching Jack's face. You did it, Jack, she said softly. You're the protector we've always needed. You're our family now. Jack looked down at the girl in his arms and then at Alira, his heart swelling with an emotion he couldn't quite name. He had been so lost before, so unsure of who he was or where he belonged. But now, in this moment, he knew he was exactly where he was supposed to be. This isn't over, Alira said, her voice steady as she looked at the fallen Zynthar. They'll come again, but we'll be ready. Jack nodded, his gaze sweeping over the wreckage. He knew that the Zynthar would be back. but they had taken the first step. Together, as a family, they had faced their enemies and won. And no matter what came next, they would face it together. Because family, as Jack had come to understand, wasn't just about blood. It was about those who chose to stand by you, no matter the odds. And he had found his family one he would fight for, no matter the cost.